Hello, welcome everyone to 52 Stories. My name is Cyndia. We're going to work together on improving our writing, so it's really nice to hear and see everyone that has decided to join us. Now, we will write every week for a year, and we'll write different short stories. We're going to learn 52 different story types. Some people say that there are more or less different amount of story structures. And if you look at different books like The Story Structure Architect, Victoria goes over so many different types. If you go look at Scene and Structure, he'll say that there's just one type. So, and they're all kind of the same. So it kind of just depends on who you ask, but I just think 52 is a kind of a convenient number for us. So that is what we're going to use for right now. At the end of the 52 short stories, you'll end up with a collection. Try to connect your stories with a common theme, setting, or characters. For example, the short story book Arranged Marriage is about an Indian woman who moved to America to get married and all of their coming to America stories. It is actually a really good immigrant book. Another example would be for short stories is Winesburg, Ohio, and that's by Sherwood Anderson. That is a collection of short stories about a historical town that's coping with the effects of changing from a simple farming little town to industrialization. Very interesting story, and maybe something to keep in mind too for anyone that is trying to maybe want to keep a collection of stories about maybe people who live in London, or people who live in, I don't know, Mogadishu, Hargeisa, Minnesota, wherever, Toronto. It is kind of interesting, the idea of writing about people who live in a certain location, or even people that are experiencing similar things, like maybe the war, or maybe immigration, or I don't know, the refugee camp, things like that that are a common theme of characters. The other option you can do is write about characters that perhaps you maybe want to write a novel about in the future. So you can use this as a brainstorming exercise to create a novel, and it's up to you, but either way, try your best to connect the stories, whether you say, I want to use this as a brainstorming exercise, I want to use this as just kind of to practice, and then end up with a collection of stories that, who knows, maybe you can publish at the end if you actually finish them all. So either way, just think about what is best for you at this time. Now, with the history of the structure of stories, over time stories have changed. Before, stories were mainly written in poetry form. Then later on, stories were written, as letters, then even as diaries. But they do say that it was Charles Dickens who developed a sequence of scenes that is considered modern story writing. And remember, he's the one that wrote Great Expectations, A Christmas Carol, and the Ghost of Christmas Past, right? All of those, that guy. So I'm sure you guys know him. So either way, so what is a scene? A scene is the basic building block of a story. It's the action in the story, what you can see. So think about a scene is something that can be seen, right? Pretty simple. It's not hard. So, but when you want to think about the scene sequence, that's a little bit different. So, but we can go into that as an example later on, like in a few seconds or a few minutes. But for now, I just want to say what we're going to do. The first story type we're going to discuss is judging you wrong. So this would be like a story about someone who's judging another person based on opinion, appearance, reputation, gossip, family, clan. Well, I just had to throw a clan in there, or behavior. Usually you have about 2 or 3 main characters, but of course you can always have other people who are watching them, like side characters. For example, you could maybe have a victim, a non-judgmental person, and the judging person. Now, what would be the conflict in the story? Remember, every story should have conflict. You want to have the person that's judgmental is the conflict. And it's always good, really, to have conflict as one person that's bringing it. So perhaps they have hatred, self-interest, jealousy. They could be just naive. Or maybe there's a misunderstanding. What started the conflict? Was it a rumor? Maybe they saw something and made an assumption. Maybe they're afraid of the new character will do something that will ruin everything or take away their happiness. Just think about this, like a victim could be like the new employee, a new student, new family member, somebody who could just be subjected to getting judged because, they're new, they just came. So now, when it comes to scenes, they usually say, or they do say, that there is actually like a sequence to it. So, the steps of a scene would be, for example, first you have the goal of a character, then you have the conflict to that goal, a disaster, maybe when nothing works out, there's a reaction of how the character feels, then a dilemma of what the character should do, and finally the character making a decision. So, for here, so to break it down a little bit, so if you have a goal for this kind of story, judging you wrong, you would say, okay, let me think about it. What judgment does a judging person want to convince everyone of? Do they want to say, hey, that this person, look at the way they're dressed, look at the clan they came from, look at the way they're behaving, I heard bad things about them. What is it that they feel that they need to convince everybody of? So what would the conflict be? What is it that the judging person, what do they tell everybody that makes them pay attention? Like, there has to be some kind of evidence, right? There maybe even is somebody who doesn't agree, like a non-judgmental person. So what is it that is the conflict to this? And there has to be something, right? Now, what would be the disaster? Suppose the victim arrives and maybe they're rude or they behave suspiciously in front of everyone. And now does everyone say, oh my gosh, it's true, this person is awful and the judgmental person was correct? So, as for the reaction, will anyone help? Will anyone side with someone? How public is this? Was this only a few people who saw this? Was this everyone who saw this or no one? Is this victim somebody that everybody knows or not? Do they do anything that creates more suspicion when the person arrives? I mean, what is it that, anything, just what is the reaction that everyone is having? As for a dilemma, perhaps the judging person wants to confront the victim, but suppose the non-judgmental person says no, don't ask them, is it true? Don't try to correct their behavior. Just, stop, leave them alone. This is a new person. So have mercy on them. So what is the dilemma? Because the dilemma, think about it this way, it's kind of like having two choices. Neither one of them is particularly a good thing. So on one hand, you're like, okay, it's good to confront the person. On the other hand, maybe it's better not to. But either way, if you don't confront them, then maybe they won't change their behavior. Maybe they can't clear up the rumor that you heard. So, but it's not really polite, right? So either way, so what is the dilemma that they have? So, and who knows? I mean, it doesn't even necessarily have to be that confrontation. So it could even be a matter of just, should you trust this person or not trust this person? It could be that kind of situation about trust. So, because it's not really difficult. I mean, it's difficult to, if you say, I want to trust a stranger with something important. So what is the dilemma? What's the choice that they have to make? So at the end, does the judging person decide to confront the victim? Do they decide to trust them? Do they decide to leave them alone? What is it they decide? Does the victim do anything? Do they just take control of the situation? Do they just continue to be a victim? Has the judging person learned anything or not? So at the end, what happened? So for example, let's say, and I just made this up real quick. So let's say, suppose this is some guy named Hassan who he's very upset that his least favorite brother's teenage son is moving to the house. He tries to convince his wife that they shouldn't let him stay. His nephew arrives and is very careless. He misbehaves and just, his wife is very shocked, and so is all the other children. Hassan wants to confront the boy, but his wife begs him not to because it's not polite. Hassan decides to confront the boy and tell him the rules of the house, but the boy explains that his father is leaving the country to find a new wife and leaving him behind. So Hassan realizes his nephew's situation, and in the end, he just lets him stay. So, there you go. Somebody who he judged his nephew because he's like, okay, you're like my least favorite brother, so I don't even want to be nice to you whatsoever. But at the end, he's like, okay, um, he's just a kid, and I should just take care of him because this is my nephew. I'm his uncle. All right, so this week, what I want you guys to work on is write an outline for your 6 steps that happen. Um, so remember the 6 steps that would be. So you want to make sure you have your, different things that happen. You want to make sure you have a goal, a conflict, disaster, reaction, dilemma, decision. So make sure you include all of those different things. The other thing you have to make sure you consider is time frame, which is something I guess I didn't realize necessarily at first when I first started writing, but time frame is important. Don't say that your short story took place in like 100 years. Don't do that. Say this is a short story, it happened in like 6 minutes, very quick. Maybe it happened in 1 hour. Maybe it happened in 6 hours. But try to keep it short and sweet. Don't make this into an extremely long story because we don't want to do that. That's not the purpose of this. So 6 minutes, 60 minutes, 6 hours. Pick one of them. Keep it short and sweet. Okay? So make sure you try to write, if you can, 100 words per step of your story. So like 100 words for the goal, 100 words for the conflict, at least, but preferably, honestly, like try to write 200 words if you can. But if you fall somewhere in the middle of that, I guess that's okay. But in the future, just try to make it 200, just because at the end, we just want to make this a little bit longer as much as possible, right? So 200 would be better for each step. So, but either way, it's okay because we're all learning, we're still new, and you can always come back to your story. So sometimes maybe you don't know exactly what to say, but sometimes when you just put it down and come back to it, you will figure out what you need to say. So basically, just remember what Ray Bradbury said. Write a short story every week. It's not possible to write 52 bad short stories in a row. So everybody, good luck, and see you soon.